Okay, so I'm back again. Let's see if Facebook will let me go live horizontally now, because I was fine and then it flipped me for some reason and I don't know what that's all about. So anyways, it's CeCe from CeCe Restyled, and okay, so I did a little bit of a thing, and I decided that it would be fun to find out what everyone's most least likely, what colors from Dixie Belle Paint Company would be folks' least likely that they would use color. So I had like 300 and some comments with colors that people, you know, they're least likely to use. We could say least favorite, but I'm going to say least likely to use. I don't know if that's the same thing, but it sounds a little nicer, right? So the color that you are least likely to use. We had over 300 comments. I decided to tally those up, and the 5 top most answered colors, the winners, I decided I was going to use those to paint an entire piece with, because I must be crazy. I thought it would be real fun. I thought it would be a good challenge. I'm not quite sure yet if I have decided that it was a good idea or not. So let me show you the colors, and then you can help me decide if it was a good or a bad idea. So my point, I guess, was that regardless the color and your preference for it, there's always a reason. Every color has its place. You know, every color has its reason for use and can be beautiful and can be useful. So just because it's not your favorite doesn't mean you're never going to use it or you shouldn't use it. And then we picked the colors. So some of my, I'm not going to say my favorites, but some colors I use quite often ended up on that list of the top 5 general consensus least likely to be used colors. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the number 1 most least likely to be used color by everyone's vote was pine cone. Okay. This is pine cone, this lovely shade of brown. Okay, I gotta be honest, this is probably what I would have chose. Mostly because when we paint furniture, most of it is already brown. Pretty much this shade of brown that we're trying to kind of get away from. So that's probably why, you know, one of the reasons why it was the top most least likely to be used color in a general consensus. So number 2 was collard greens. And I'm baffled by this because I just painted a piece for myself the other day with collard greens in it and almost didn't post it because I did this poll. And then I was like, well, nobody likes that color. I can't post it, but I did anyways, and everybody liked the piece. So collard greens in your face. Number 3 was actually farmhouse green, which truly baffles me because I love farmhouse green. I don't know what is wrong with you people. Why don't you like farmhouse green? Do you have something against pastel greens? Apparently. Then Lucky Lavender was number 4, which I also don't get because Lucky Lavender is beautiful. And purples are my favorite colors. And obviously everyone has different favorite colors. But yes, I agree. Pine cone looks a little bit like the baby poo when they're little tiny firstborn babies. And it's like that. Changes, you know, when they get older, but yeah, you know, yes, it kind of looks a little pooish, but you know, whatever. So Lucky Lavender, I'm baffled. Frankly, I'm disappointed in some of you for choosing Lucky Lavender. A whole lot of you apparently chose Lucky Lavender because I love purple. I don't see how you can not love purple. And then last but not least, number 5 was Colonel Mustard, which is also a little crazy to me because I love vintage mustard yellow. I mean, I feel like it's a nice, happy color, reminiscent of, you know, retro, older times. I don't know, but I like Colonel Mustard, so I was a little surprised. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and show you those all together now. See, this is the scheme that they create all together. And my challenge was to take the 5 most answered least likely to be used colors and use them on one piece. I thought it was all fun and games. It was going to be a good time, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with these colors? So I spent quite a bit of time thinking about what I was going to do with these colors. And I came up with a plan, which part of my plan is a secret until you see the finished product. So the drawers I've got almost finished, and those I'm not going to show you, but I will show you how I'm using the other colors in my design. Now, by no means am I saying that you should change your mind about your least favorite color or least likely to be used color. You may still hate collard greens after you see it on my piece. I'm not trying to persuade you to make that your favorite color. Again, I'm just trying to show you that it can work and be useful, and also that you take the 5 least likely to be used colors and put them all together, and you can make something out of it. You know what I mean? Like, it may not be my best piece ever, but I'm bound and determined to make it work. So I figured out a plan, and this is where I'm at. So I was looking at the colors, and I'm thinking brown, 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 brown. We paint a lot of brown furniture to get rid of the brown. So I decided to use pine cone to create a faux wood grain. That seemed to make the most sense to me. So that's what I did, and I'm like, okay, well, I need a base color, because the technique that I do to create the faux wood grain calls for a base color that's not the same as the wood grain color. So I decided the warmest, most closest to wood color I had was Colonel Mustard. So I took my Colonel Mustard and I did a base coat. This is my lovely wood grain. It's not my most favorite shade of wood grain, and if I were to stain wood, it would probably not be quite this yellowish orange. But, I'm doing the best I can with the colors I was given. So I created a wood grain. I used Colonel Mustard as the base. Okay, Colonel Mustard as the base. And then, I used Slick Stick on this piece because I also may have picked the ugliest nightstand in the world to go with the least likely to be used colors. So 2 coats of Slick Stick all over it, and then let it dry overnight. And then I decided I wanted to make this the faux wood grain, so I did 1 coat of Colonel Mustard, which was enough to give me some coverage over my Slick Stick. I was just trying to add a little bit of warmth to the wood grain, so that's why I chose the Colonel Mustard. If I was doing this with any colors that I wanted to, I probably would have used Sandbar or buttercream or burlap. Burlap I really like to use to make faux wood grain. So 1 coat of my base coat, which in this instance was Colonel Mustard. And I'm not ignoring you guys. I'm sorry. I will say hi if you hop on. I appreciate it. I will go back and answer questions if I miss any. Hi, thanks for hopping on. This is a pretty interesting challenge here. So anyway, base coat of Colonel Mustard, okay? And then I took a brush, and 1 row at a time, so I would take my brush and paint 1 strip and go over it with a wood graining tool to create my wood grain, okay? And I did that with the pine cone. So I used the pine cone to create the wood grain, and then after that was dry, my faux graining was dry with the pine cone, I took my gator hide and I added I took about 4 ounces of gator hide and I added about 3/4 of a teaspoon of my pine cone to the gator hide and mixed it up. And so when I tint the gator hide and then paint it on, what that does is it's like a wash. It kind of takes the harsh contrast of the Colonel Mustard and the pine cone wood grain, and it kind of just evens it out a little bit. So it makes it look a little bit more natural, and that's the technique I use every time that I'm creating faux wood grain, just different colors. So I ended up doing 3 coats of tinted gator hide, tinted with pine cone. If I would have added a little bit more paint, I probably could have just done 2 coats, but I wasn't real sure, and I didn't want to go overboard, so I just did 3 coats, and each coat I kind of assessed, okay, do I want another coat or not? to kind of just tone down my wood grain and still use my pine cone. So I'm meeting the criteria of my challenge. So 2 colors I got knocked out right away with my wood grain, or my faux wood grain, which leaves me to use Farmhouse Green, Collard Greens, Farmhouse Green, and Lucky Lavender. So those are my 3 colors left that I have to use on the rest of the piece. I decided I'm going to throw in a little bit of Colonel Mustard too, so technically I'll be using 4 colors on the rest of the piece. So here's what I came up with, okay? We're going to do it, this technique I like to call the blendy blend, where I have a base coat and then I take some kind of random contrasting colors and I put those in, I want to say randomly, but there is some placement and thought put in to where I place my colors to make it appear natural. So in order for something to look natural, you have to think about it and make it appear as if you didn't think about it. You know what I'm saying? That's kind of tricky. So anyways, I went ahead and I did a base coat in Farmhouse Green. So, I'll move you down here. Base coat in Farmhouse Green. So there you can get a little better look at my faux wood graining. So it's not bad. It's not my first choice of colors that I would normally choose. I usually go for a more grayish, medium brown kind of faux wood grain, like a reclaimed barn kind of look. But this is, it's fine. It worked. I'm happy with it. I'm happy with how my wood grain turned out. Okay, so then I went over the whole entire rest of the piece with 1 coat of Farmhouse Green. And as you can see down at the bottom, I've got a little bit of collard greens on the tips of the feet. And what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to start by doing just a little ombre blend of the Farmhouse Green to the collard greens so that they look like they were just kind of dipped in the darker collard greens, if that makes sense. Oh, good, Sue. I'm glad you love all these colors. That's awesome. I'm an equal opportunity color user. So, oh yes, Barbie, all the purples. Give me all the purples. I love purple. Okay, give me all of them. So, I'm going to start down at the very bottom and work my way up. So, I got my collard greens. I got my Farmhouse Green. I got my mister bottle with water. Okay, just a continuous spray Mr. Misty bottle. Misty for the blendy, okay? And we're going to start, like I said, on the bottom and work our way up. So I already have brushes out. I already have brushes for my collard greens and Farmhouse Green. So for the Farmhouse Green, I'm using a synthetic mini angle brush from Dixie Belle. Since it's primarily the color on the piece, I want some nice, good coverage. And then for my collard greens, since I'm only using a little bit of collard greens, I'm just using a little flat small. I love these little brushes for like accent blending and stuff. It's also a synthetic brush from Dixie Belle. Love their synthetics. I'm going to go ahead and start this foot down here in the bottom. And I'm just going to go right over where I put my first coat of collard greens, just on the tips of the feet. Okay, and then I got to get my inside. I'm just going to paint on my second coat, just like I did my first coat. And I want to blend small areas at a time, small sections at a time. So I'm just going to kind of come in here and get this little area of Farmhouse Green, give it a little mist of water. I'm going to mist it with the water because what that does is help keep it wet and workable. So it's got some open time to it and I can blend, because you can't blend dry paint, am I right? So we need to keep it somewhat wet. Okay, so there goes that's the area I'm working with at a time. Okay, we'll move on from area to area. I'm going to be blending with my Belle brush because I got a nice small little area I have to blend there, and this is a nice small little round brush. So I'm going to be blending with my Belle brush. Hopefully it tames itself and isn't too crazy shedding today. And then right where the colors meet, I'm just going to go back and forth gently. See how they're starting to blend together? Can you see? Do I have you pointed down far enough? Oh, Stacy, I know, right? There's so many, most of the colors on this list, I'm very disappointed, but, you know, the people have spoken, so what can you do? We don't all have the same favorite colors, so I can't expect everyone to love Lucky Lavender as much as I do, but anyways, okay, so we're going to move on to the inside of the leg, and right where the colors meet, we're just kind of go back and forth to get them to blend together. I know you probably can't see super great on the inside of that leg there, but hopefully you can at least see what I'm doing. Okay, so now I'm just going to keep blending them together, and I want my fade a little bit big, so I'm going to go up a little bit. When I bring my brush up, it brings a little bit of that collard greens up into the farmhouse green, and then when I go back down, it brings some more of that farmhouse green into the collard greens. And, you know, basically just trying to get each color contaminated just a little bit with the other color, if that makes sense. Okay, so, and if you need to add more, sometimes the darker colors can tend to take over, or the lighter colors can tend to take over, and that's okay. Just add a little bit more paint if you make a boo-boo. Okay, so that's our ombre foot. I'm going to do the inside real quick the same manner. And then we're going to do this foot. Okay, we're going to do the front foot. Remember, we're working in small sections at a time, so I'm only doing one foot at a time. It just makes sense so that your paint doesn't dry up on you. Okay, we're going to go around all 4 sides of the little feetsies here. Inside. Okay, and now we're going to do our farmhouse green. So misting the paint with water, like I said, helps you to blend effectively because it keeps your paint workable. That's one benefit. Another benefit is that it helps your paint go further. Honestly, like if you don't mist it with water while you're painting, you're going to go through a lot more paint. So it's effectively you're kind of what's the word? Diluting it almost, but you're not losing the coverage, which is what I love about Dixie Belle, is that even when you mist it down with water to make it last longer, you don't lose the coverage. So that's awesome. You know, who doesn't want their paint to last longer? You know, like, shoot, I don't like to waste money. I don't know anybody that does. All right, so we went all around the leg, and then we're going to go ahead and give that a little misty mist of water. And we're going to do the exact same thing right here that we did on the other leg, right where they meet, back and forth, to get those colors to start blending together. So bring our brush up a little, down a little, and that is, you know, it's really easy. Like, don't overthink it. Just a few strokes, get those colors kind of mixing in together, and be done. Move on. Put the brush down. Okay, the more you try to work at it, the more muddy and messed up it's going to get. Like, you just can't overthink it, okay? I know that's very hard to do, which is why I suggest practicing your blending. If you're still trying to get the technique down, practice it on a scrap piece of wood. Okay, don't go straight to your grandmother's, great-great-grandmother's prize heirloom china cabinet and then say you messed it up because you didn't get your blend right. You should practice it first on something that doesn't matter, that you're not going to be sad if you have to repaint it, you know. So that's just my best advice. You know, nobody learned how to blend an ombre overnight. I mean, I suppose there are some people who just picked up a brush and did it naturally, but most people, not so much. So, you know, don't expect that of yourself. Okay, so we're just going all around the foot, the little feet, getting our ombre on all 4 sides of the feet. And I like to wipe my brush off to keep, keep it fairly clean of excess paint so that it just makes my blending process go easier when I'm not constantly getting rid of unwanted brush marks that I could have just prevented by wiping the extra paint off my brush. Okay, so now we're going to get to the fun part. Okay, well that was fun, but now we're going to get to the part with all the colors, okay? This is where all the colors are going to come together. And this was the challenging part for me. The most challenging part for me was trying to figure out how I was going to use all these colors in conjunction with each other. This is no problem for me. I love Farmhouse green, so I would just work with this piece just like it is. But my challenge was to use all 5 of the colors on a piece, so that's what I'm doing. I'm not ignoring anybody again. I'm just, instead of scrolling and talking, I like to kind of paint. But I'll go back through and answer any questions for sure. But I don't see any burning desires right off the bat, so I'm just going to keep on moving. Okay, so first coat of Farmhouse green. We're going to go ahead and throw on our second coat of Farmhouse green. And I probably should have taped off my wood grain, but I didn't. I like to live life on the edge, so I'm just going to steady hand eyeball it just like this. But you may want to tape it off. That would be the wise thing to do. Yeah, so give it a little misty mist of water and continue my second coat just like I did the first coat, just straight out solid old Farmhouse green. I just cannot stop tripping on why you guys chose Farmhouse green. Look at it, it's beautiful. This is a great color. I love this color. But again, everybody, has their own opinion and is entitled to that. So apparently most people don't like the Farmhouse green. But I'm not one of those people. So let that be on the record. I happen to love me some Farmhouse green. Okay, so on the bottom section of this, we'll call it the legs, this whole little area around here that we just painted, I'm going to leave that as is. So we're going to blendy blend from this point up. I've got my base coat, second coat of the Farmhouse, and while it's wet, we're going to go ahead and open up our, we're going to get our Colonel Mustard back out and our Lucky Lavender. And we've got our collard greens out so far. And you know what's funny, okay, that I was noticing last night when I was trying to figure out what to do with these colors. Okay, so I don't know how familiar everyone is with the color wheel, but on the color wheel, depending on where colors land and what kind of scheme you're trying to make, certain configurations form, pleasant or harmonizing, generally thought of as nice color combinations, right? It's science. It's math and science. It's the color wheel, okay? It's not anybody's opinion. It's a legit thing, the color wheel, okay? I was noticing on the color wheel in the triadic formation is green, purple, and orange. Okay, green, purple, and orange make one of my favorite color combinations, color schemes. It's called triadic because there's 3 and they're equidistant apart on the color wheel. So purple, green, and mustard is what I have to work with, and that is pretty darn close to purple, green, and orange. Because Colonel Mustard's is the vintagey yellow with orange tint. So, I mean, I would, for all intents and purposes, consider this an actual color scheme of, a triadic color scheme off the color wheel. So I actually got pretty lucky. These colors, technically, science says that they should go together. So, voila. All right, so now I'm going to take some little cheapy 1-inch art brushes from the craft store. I mean, they're just little cheap 1-inch flat guys. Honestly, when I'm doing this technique, the cheaper and crappier the brushes, the better. You don't want precision. You don't want precise placement. You just want to slap it on there. And cheaper brushes equal less precision, which is going to behoove us in this situation. So we've got our crappy 1-inch brushes from the store, the craft store. And I've got one for each color, collard greens, kernel, and lucky lavender. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of start. Now this is what I was talking about earlier when I said you have to really think about making it look like you didn't think about it. So I'm going to actually start with collard greens. I'm going to start with my darkest color first and work my way up to the lightest. And I'm just going to kind of like start here and kind of just create some random, you know, like, I don't want to say drippies, but some spots. So I don't want to make it all perfect and like perfectly across and spaced out. I want it to look random, you know, like it was an accident. Okay, so I'm not creating a pattern. I'm not, you know, doing them like stripes. It's just kind of make it look natural. And then I'm going to take my next darkest color, which is Kernel Mustard, and I'm going to do a very similar thing. I'm just going to kind of just slap on some lines here and there, maybe some coming down here. Okay, the less you think about placement, I guess, is the best, you know, because then you don't overthink it and it doesn't look contrived when you're all done. Lucky Lavender is last but not least. I'm going to put a lot of lavender right there. I love Lucky Lavender. What is wrong with you people? This color is amazing. All right, so I just slapped it on, right? Like it doesn't look like I thought about it too much because I didn't. And now I'm going to take my cheapy chip brush. So Dixie Belle carries 2 chip brushes, all right? Premium one, which I actually love to use, and this cheapy guy. Remember I said the cheaper the better? See those crazy wild hairs? That's going to benefit us, you know, when we're doing our blendy blend. So this is what we're going to do. We're just going to just kind of take our brush. You know what? I probably really should tape off my wood. I don't know where my tape went. Okay. We're just going to kind of take it and randomly start to kind of blend our streaks together. So you definitely don't want to overwork it because then you just get this muddy brown color if you overwork it. When these colors mix together, they turn brown, and we don't want brown. We want to keep the separation of the color. We just don't want them to all mixed totally together, okay? I know you're probably thinking, what is she doing? This is stupid. But I'm not done yet, okay? You know how they say stuff has to get ugly before it gets better. I'm going to add in a little bit more Farmhouse green to kind of break up these spots a little bit. And maybe go back and forth a couple spots this way to kind of break up how linear it is. And then I'm just going to keep kind of blending them together. I really need to grab my tape. I should have taped off that top. And so basically what I'm doing is I found a way to use all of my colors on, you know, that I was challenged to use from the list, and I'm incorporating them all here. So I'm meeting my challenge requirements by creating this background texture with all the colors, and it just kind of makes my background a little bit more interesting. My base coat, background, whatever you want to call it, a little more interesting, because I'm not going to leave it like this. This is just like some texture I'm creating. You know what I'm saying? Layers. We're going to do layers. But that's probably going to work for right now, okay? I'm going to let that dry for just a minute, and then I'm going to go over it one more time with in a few spots with the colors. So it's all about layers, So I'm going to let that dry for just a second. Can you see a little bit better? I don't know. My screen is a little dark, so I can't really tell how that looks. Kind of almost like an I can never say that word. it looks a little bit like an oxidation, you know, like, you know, something is patinaing a little bit. You know how patinas can come in all kinds of very beautiful and bright various colors. So that's I kind of think of it as like a patina type look. So I'm going to let that dry for just a second. Let's see. Boop, 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 boop. I'm going to see if there's any questions real quick. Becky, okay, so can you blend with any brush? If you understand how blending works and you have the technique, whatever technique that may be, my technique, your technique, Brandy's technique, Kristana's technique, AJ's technique with the sponge, whatever technique that is that works for you, once you have that down, you can blend with any brush. Now, I'm not going to lie. It doesn't mean it's easy to blend with any brush. And so I have a favorite brush that I use when I'm blending. 99% of the time, unless it's something like this, where I want a cheapy chip brush to get a certain striated look, I usually use a specific brush. So I'm all about my challenges. I love to challenge myself because it keeps life interesting. So last Sunday, I challenged myself to blend with a cheapy chip brush. And just to prove that if you understand the technique and how it works, and you've practiced and it's clicked for you, you can blend with any brush. But it doesn't mean it's easy. So I blended a whole piece with the chip brush, and I'm never doing that again. I mean, this is different. I'm going for a different look here. I'm not going for a dreamy, blendy, you know, cloudy goodness look. I'm going for this kind of streaky oxidation kind of look. But I probably will never do that type of blending with a chip brush ever again. It was awful. I did it. It looks good and it's fine, but it was not fun. So I definitely have a preferred brush that I think makes blending very easy, very, very natural, and just really aids in the process, you know, less strokes, you know, if you're using the right tool. It just makes it easier, really, and more comfortable. So let's see. Any other questions? A mix of pine cone and collard greens for the wood grain. Yeah, I could have done that. I just used straight pine cone for the wood grain, and that was fine because it's a pretty woodsy color. So I think it looks all right. In case you're just hopping on or you missed it earlier, I used the kernel mustard and the pine cone from the list of 5 colors that I have to use. I used pine cone and kernel mustard to create this wood grain look, which again is not my favorite tone or color of wood. It's not my favorite, but it's going to work here. It'll work. Okay, so I've let that dry for a few minutes. I'm going to go through and add a few more chunky spots of the yellow. Okay, I want a little bit more chunk. And I can go whichever way. I prefer to kind of go one way or the other, but every once in a while I'll throw in a crosshatch just to change it up. And then I'm going to throw in a couple chunks of Lucky Lavender here, because I love Lucky Lavender. I'm in the apparently in the minority of that situation. Anyways, so now we're just going to do the same thing that we did on the first kind of layer. We're just going to blend those in, not too much. We want to keep our separations of color. I'm going to add a little bit more Farmhouse green. Might have gone too chunky with the yellow. Okay, and then I'm wiping off my brush so that I don't get yellow all up in my Lucky Lavender over here. And we're going to do similar, just kind of quick sweeping motion to kind of get that to blend a little bit, but not too much. Almost like a colorful linen, I guess you could call it. And then, let's see, I gator hided this top, tinted gator hide, so since I didn't tape it off, I'm just going to scrape off my boo-boos where I got paint. Because gator hide is the bomb, and you can do that. Okay, you guys, I put gator hide on every piece of furniture that is going in my home because my kids have spilled nail polish on gator hidden tables, gator hid tables. I gator hided a table, and my kids spilled nail polish all over it, and I wiped it right up. The dried nail polish, I scraped it right off. She also went at my kitchen cabinets with a Sharpie or a paint marker. I'm sorry, not a Sharpie, a paint marker. And I was freaking out, but since I had gator hide on it, I took some soap and water and I wiped it right off. So gator hide is and always will be my favorite product, and you're not going to change my mind about that. Okay, so that is our background for our sides using all of the colors that were on the list. Now this isn't it, okay? So yay! So I met my requirements of the challenge. I used all the colors, blah, blah, blah. But I still want it to look good and cohesive. I still want a nice looking piece. I don't want to just be able to say I used all those colors on a piece. So I want to further bring together this design. So after this dries, what I'm going to do is take a large stencil, and I'm just going to very kind of, what's the word, not randomly, but I'm going to fill in the stencil with probably some gold wax or iridescent wax or shimmery wax of some sort, because I love to layer. All about layering. I love layering. I love the interest that it creates, the texture that it creates. It's fun. So I'm going to take a large stencil and create some more texture and another layer with some wax. Maybe gold. I don't want it to be quite so in your face as straight up gold, so I might do like a shimmery, more subtle type of texture with the color of wax that I end up choosing. I'm not sure, but I am going to do that on top of this after it's all dry. So that is basically, in a nutshell, the cabinet of my challenge piece, my self-imposed challenge piece that I may or may not regret because I am digging some of the colors chosen and kind of hurts my feelings that y'all don't like Lucky Lavender, but that's besides the point. Got a little paint drippy